Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli back with another review video, and with me my dad, and finally, at long last, I of course have been meaning to watch this and of course also do a review on this, and well, because my dad joining me for this, and makes sense for him to join me for this, and well, because what it is that we're going to be reviewing and talking about is something very important and special to us. And in the family, of course. In our family. That's right, guys. At long last, I, along with my dad, we are reviewing this documentary, which I didn't know. I just didn't know. I knew this was going to be good, but when watching this, and obviously that goes for my dad too, didn't realize how good, really good this would be. That being Hot Potato, the story of the Wiggles. Yes. So, okay, so, first off, a little background, because I remember, I of course remember hearing, back in 2022, in mid-2022, when this documentary was first announced, and, we were going to get the official full-time documentary about the Wiggles. Now, I do recall that there was already a documentary on the Wiggles, maybe one or two. Like, they were just basically on TV, so they were like TV documentaries, not like say those kind of documentaries that would be like feature length or something like that. So that's what they were. But now we've got the official like full length documentary of the Wiggles from the start and, well, currently at this time. So yeah, and I was, of course, planning on reviewing it at some point, especially right after it came out, but I never got a chance to do it, and, well, I guess now I realize the time didn't come until now, and, and especially when I finally got to watch it, and the same goes for my dad, and golly, I can't believe how great this turned out, and for me, because what more do I have to say? Because I really enjoyed it. And until we go further into the documentary and such, but we'll now turn to you, because what are the first things you have to say?
Well, it really did a deep dive on the Wiggles, on the four original members of the Anthony,
OG,
Jeff, Murray,
and Greg.
Yeah.
And now they're called the OG Wiggles.
OG Wiggles, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, from their inception, they started out, they had just small crowds. And when I say small crowds, I mean like maybe 10 people sometimes. But they would do their shows, and it just started growing exponentially after that. It just exploded.
Right.
But they all had backgrounds in education.
Yep. And just to stop you for just a sec, I just want to quickly, and as always, read the description / the story. I'll take it from here. Showcases the friendship and musical journey of four friends who record a one-off album of children's music in the early 90s and forever changed the global music industry. So, yeah.
For a fact.
Yep, for a fact. And obviously, because, like, in the early days, and for the four guys, because, well, and especially for Anthony and Jeff, because, well, they were part of, an Australian rock and roll band, the Cockroaches.
Right, and I did not know Anthony was in that band.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, because I don't think I ever asked you this. I did ask this to my mom when I was talking to her about the documentary, and she knew the name. She heard of the name the Cockroaches. What about you? Like, did you knew them? Like,
I had heard of them. I didn't listen to them, but they were an Aussie band.
So you were familiar with their existence.
The one song they played last night, I think I had heard it before. Yeah, it was one of those 80s flash in the pan songs, and I'm sure they were very popular and very successful in Australia. But in the United States, I think they had a one-off hit here, and it was probably the one that they played last night, so more people would recognize it.
True, yeah. In fact, one of their songs, which is one of the Cockroaches' top hits, that Greg he can't stop listening to.
Yep.
And not to mention, because, well, Greg, he was a huge fan of the Cockroaches.
Yeah, he was a huge fan of the Cockroaches, and he was a fanboy, basically. and he worked as a roadie. And then you know, when Anthony asked him to come join him and form a band, he was just, I think he was smitten. You know, he couldn't believe it that he was being asked by one of the Cockroaches to, you know. So I guess he got over that, you know, that starstruck effect after a period of time, obviously, but because they all became good friends,
and also because they all went to university. I think it was just Murray, Anthony, and Greg that went to university. And at university, that's where, you know, Anthony, and along with Greg, they met Murray there. So, you know, because of them wanting to form a band and such, and, you know, make children's music, which wasn't really done nothing like that was done at the time. And then Anthony calling in Jeff, and then they started doing this. And the thing is, it started off as 5 members. There was Philip Welcher, and his time in being a part of the Wiggles didn't last long, and as the documentary explains, he played piano. I've also seen him play trumpet, and when Anthony delivered it and turned it to ABC. And then they started, you know, doing more songs, and then one of their first characters that they created was, of course, Dorothy the dinosaur.
Yeah, she was the first character that was created, and it was a huge hit.
And Murray, he was the original voice. So, if you recall, because as it says in the documentary. Yep. And then further on, because when they started creating the other characters from Captain Feathersword, Henry, and Wags, so. Then when they met Paul Pettick, and because, well, Anthony, he had a hernia, and he was playing trumpet, and he was unable to participate and attend and, you know, be in one of the Wiggles shows. And so he asked Paul Pettick, because they met as well, and they shared a flat, and Anthony asked Paul to fill in for him, and Paul had no idea, and had not known the Wiggles, and not seen one of their shows. But they were going to take him along. They were going to take him through this, but they didn't have time. And so he just had to put the gear on and such from Dorothy, Wags, and Captain Feathersword. And while wearing that, he just had no idea, but he still did it. So he still went along.
Well, and he had been in a production of West Side Story, so
yes,
he knew, you know, he was obviously
that's right.
You know, coachable and probably I'm sure a quick learner. You know, because of his abilities on stage. So.
Yeah, and just amazing just how it wasn't taking them that long. I mean, over through the 90s, how, like, as the years went by in the 90s, they were getting there. They were becoming popular.
God, they were selling out arenas. I mean, it was incredible. And they always, and really the parents were probably as much into it as the kids were.
Yeah.
If not a little more.
Yeah.
You know?
Not to mention, because, like, they used to sell the merchandise their own. I think from, like, Jeff's briefcase. But, of course, eventually, like a company and such, you know, did the merchandise and such for the Wiggles. And how bigger they got, well, because in 1997 they had their own movie. So.
Sure.
Then at some point in the late 90s, around 97 and 98, it was mostly 98, because they wanted to take a shot and travel to the U.S. It started slow, but thanks to, say, Disney and then Lyric Studios, boy, did they become a big hit in the U.S.
I thought it was interesting how when 9/11 happened in 2001.
Yes, I had a feeling that this documentary was going to talk about that, because 9/11 had a huge part on the Wiggles.
They were coming into the U.S. and they thought, you know, do we cancel these shows or do we do it? And fortunately, they did it. And there was a
and you know, like,
a widow of a fireman. The fireman was killed.
Brian Cannizzaro.
Trying to, you know, help people, rescue people from the Twin Towers.
Yeah,
and he was killed when one of the buildings collapsed.
I think because those who are in this documentary, because of course the 4 guys, and also Paul Field, the leader of the Cockroaches, Anthony's brother, like what he was like, him talking about the fireman Brian Cannizzaro and with what was going on. And just you can tell, and just like with what Paul was saying, because he was helping getting people out, and obviously from the second tower, and when it collapsed,
and that killed a lot of people. But you know,
including not just Brian Cannizzaro, but other firefighters that were present and right at the building.
So they were, both his widow and his son were there at the show, and they met him backstage and talked. She said they must have talked for 2 hours.
Yeah, but also because when that happened, she put the Wiggles on for her son, and they were on for hours. So, and not to mention because I didn't mention this part because not just Disney, and also Lyric Studios, but Barney had some helped out the Wiggles as well.
Yep, he did.
As much as you can't stand Barney, you got to admit, Barney. It's thanks to Barney for also helping the Wiggles get there.
Yeah, I know. Got to give the devil his due. So,
as you refer Barney.
Yeah.
So
remember when you were a kid, you would see those Barney commercials come up, and I'd say, "See that? He's a very evil dinosaur. He's actually a spawn of Satan." I did it to try and scare you away because the last thing I wanted was a bunch of Barney the dinosaur videos playing in the house. And
I think the same goes for my mom. Both of you, so both of you couldn't stand
Barney. I get it. Barney's the whole concept for kids.
Exactly.
To be friends
exactly.
And love each other. I get it. It's all it's all
there. You go.
Squishy, nicey.
Just like what the Wiggles are.
Exactly. I get it.
Yeah. I get it. So again, there's no denying because Barney did also help out with getting the Wiggles up tops in America.
Yep.
Because back on the 9/11 thing, because I do recall, and I remember this because, the Wiggles staying very close with the Cannizzaro family, not to mention the Wiggly Safari video. It was dedicated to Brian Cannizzaro, and not to mention because the Wiggles, I remember hearing this. This was from one of the other documentaries that I mentioned early on, that one of them establishes that, because with, the Wiggles, and I think, Steve Irwin was involved in this, they brought the Cannizzaro family to the Australia Zoo, I'm pretty sure, so. Yeah. Not to mention because, by that point, in the late 90s and early 2000s, all the celebrities that they were meeting,
There were, that's true, and the funny thing was he told the story. He told the story about
Anthony, or
Anthony was talking about
all of them. So
which actor was it? He was in
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And he said he looked down there and he's eating popcorn, and it reminded him of that scene in
Cape Fear.
Cape Fear, which I remember that scene, and I started cracking up because that would be a surreal moment to look out there and see Robert De Niro.
Yeah, Robert De Niro at a Wiggles concert?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But, it was interesting and really touching to see some of the kids that were backstage that they would bring in for visits. And it was really sad.
And because now that you bring that up, let's talk about that, because another important thing with the Wiggles, visiting sick children.
There was a couple I remember seeing in the documentary. They had their son, and he did not look well, and he had oxygen on. He was
Jackie, the young little Jackie. So
okay, but he had a terminal illness. So here are these parents. They've got this small child, and they knew he was going to die. He had a terminal illness. He was going to die.
If it's that, if it's that serious, then the child would not last long.
So they had him there, at a Wiggles show, and he was, enjoying life as long as he lived. But it's so sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
And it is. Well, not to mention because, I had a feeling that this was probably going to be brought up too. Paul Field, because he lost a young child.
Mm-hmm.
And if you recall in the documentary,
I do remember that.
Lost a 10-month-old baby girl to SIDS.
Anthony said he remember hearing just
this scream
that he said it was beyond anything he'd ever heard before.
And what has happened?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I remember talking with this, because I mentioned that to my mom too, because apparently, nobody has ever figured out what causes SIDS.
No, SIDS stands for sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah. It's something that sadly and it's depressing. No one has figured out.
Yeah, it's very sad. But it happens, and that's just the sad reality.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and because of this, like, well, and there's this thing in Australia, and it has to do with, like, SIDS and such, like, Red Nose Day. And that being an important part with the Wiggles, too, if you are familiar with it. So, not mentioned in the documentary, but I know about it because Red Nose Day. So,
Red Nose Day, and that pertains to SIDS.
Yeah, I mean, for sick children and such. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, for SIDS, so.
Okay, well, it's probably, if it's red nosed, it's sort of like the old, the cartoons where the cartoon character gets a cold and starts sneezing and he has the red nose. That's probably what it's supposed to be about.
Okay.
It's sick children, and it's to support sick children. So, sort of like a St. Jude thing.
And okay. So with that established, because with the Wiggles still continuing on like in the early 2000s, and well, because they made it to the U.S. and how big they became, and well, also they did mention this because how they got to for the first time be a part of the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and this was 2 months after the towers fell. Yeah, well, and because then, like, them still traveling, like, not just in the U.S., but all around the world, basically, from Japan and China. I remember, because, like, one of these, like, bonus features on the Wiggles DVDs, Cold Spaghetti Western, like, postcards from Asia. That's a fun one, because they basically travel through, different parts of Asia and such, from Japan and China and Hong Kong. And, yeah, now the time has come to this part, because apparently when they were at Hong Kong, because apparently some disease or something, I forget this. SARS. Thank you. So apparently, because when that happened, because I think this is when they were at Hong Kong, and because at one point, because Greg collapsed.
Yeah.
And the Hong Kong people, like the Asians, they kind of like took Greg aside or something. They feared he collapsed from SARS. Yeah. But that wasn't the case, actually.
No, he had a condition for a long time.
And it took a little while to figure out what this was, and for quite a while, like, it seemed like Greg was okay. He went to doctor's appointments, and he was told that he was okay and such, but it was kind of taking a little bit long to realize what was going on until it was discovered that he had orthostatic intolerance.
Yes.
And basically what happens is, like, standing up, your heart doesn't pump enough blood. That's what that's what was happening with Greg, and he was at a certain point really unable to do more Wiggle shows, and it caused him to stop doing what he loved doing.
Yeah.
So,
and there was and then we that the fundraiser that was done where the four original members reunited on stage. And Greg collapsed at the end, and he had a heart attack.
Yeah, but let's not get into that just yet.
Fine. That's fine. But it just reminded me we were talking about that, because that was really scary.
But that was different. It had nothing to do with what he was diagnosed with.
It was scary nonetheless.
It was scary, but we'll get into that more when we get to there. So and also let's not forget to mention this. Like, we'll come back to Greg and his diagnosis in just a moment. Like, Anthony, his mental health. We have to, of course, talk about that.
Anthony was, I think he was just almost in denial, or he wasn't in denial. He knew there was an issue. He knew he had a problem. He wanted to inflict harm on himself. He wanted to kill himself.
And having those thoughts and such, like, he's not that good, and he, everybody hates him, and he hates himself, all that.
He didn't have any friends. He said, and all this, and his brother, I think, told him, he said, why would you say that? You've got everything going for you.
Here's this, like, who says he doesn't have any friends? And for that matter, a family, just like,
But the thing of it is that when people are in that situation.
I mean, if you get my point.
I get your point, but when people are in that situation, they close everything off. They have their perception is much different from what the reality of it is. Yeah. So in his case, he felt it was a very private matter, but then he saw the advantage to coming out and talking about it, because it would help children that would have the same situation, going through the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. And even like, Murray and Jeff, they had no idea what was going on with him at first, until Anthony opened up. And not to mention, because it was great to see, because Anthony's late father, John Field, set Anthony up to see someone, and still to this day, a therapist and such. And it's really sad because Anthony, like him being one of those members of the Wiggles that's so funny and happy and cheerful, you know,
You would just never imagine.
exactly.
You would never imagine it.
There's other great examples, like hey, Robin Williams.
Robin Williams.
There
is
you
another-
go. There you go. So that, for example, that's a good one. You know what? Even I've been there too. So and I'm sure some of you might have too. So, and it was great to see because how eventually Anthony it was clear for him. He got better. So
He did.
and through this journey and such of mental health and depression.
Yes.
And also because back to Greg because just it was sad when the day came that it was official. He was going to retire from the Wiggles. And then enter Sam Moran.
Yep.
Now, I was happy to see that Sam Moran got to be a part of this documentary, and rightfully so. And how he and a couple of others they were like Greg's understudy. Is that the word understudy? Is that the correct word?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like and
that is the correct.
lending Greg a hand when if he was unable to be at shows and such.
Exactly.
So Sam was one of them, and well, because when it came to who was the thing is they were wondering if they should continue without Greg, and who would be the next Yellow Wiggle, and sure enough, it didn't take that long for the next Yellow Wiggle to be Sam, and I also recall Sam even mentioning because he happened to catch seeing Greg almost collapsing. From autograph signing and such. But, so then, of course, the era of the Wiggles when Sam became the new Yellow Wiggle. And then, slowly but surely, because new people stepping in to being a part of the Wiggles, and some of them who soon to be become new Wiggles. So, Simon Price and Emma Watkins, Lachlan Glimpsey, yeah, might be kind of. Did I get it right? Glimpsey, I gotta go because I should have pulled this up. Gillespie, yeah. So
Gillespie.
Thank you. So sorry,
Lachlan Gillespie.
Yeah, but sometimes nickname Lucky. So
yep.
Yeah, so they stepped in, and then because in 2012, and actually, let me come back to this. We all remember the day when we heard that Greg was retiring from the Wiggles. Do you?
I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah. How did you react on that?
It was sad, but it's one of those things. But it's just how things progress. So.
And it's nice to see that there were a lot of kids how they reacted to this, and they totally understood. They just said, "Get well, Greg," and and one interviewer asked a kid, "Will Greg be all right and feel better?" And the kid acknowledged, saying yes. And of course, Greg was going to be okay, and hopefully, if this journey he was going to have to try to feel better, and if one day, if possible, one day he would return. Yeah, and that's the thing. Did you ever think that maybe one day he would come back to the Wiggles? At that time?
I never thought he would be back. No, because I knew he'd had health issues, and he was going through some health issues, and I just felt like that was going to be it for him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but sure enough, he managed to feel better. He managed to get cured and such, and with his return, and because there was no send off for Sam, and because I'm very happy because how with this being established in the documentary, because a lot of people took Sam's departure and with Greg coming back, they took it the wrong way. And apparently that was the first time, according to Anthony, that was the first time they got to experience controversy.
Yeah,
stuff like that,
Yeah, I think that was a kind of a rude awakening for them, really.
Yeah, but basically everybody, the reports and such, they were wrong. They got it wrong.
They did.
And honestly, because it just looked bad on the Wiggles and for Sam, because and what the reports had to say about that. But I mean, obviously, because I even should have, I knew, and even this was before I finally watched the documentary, because even I was thinking of this, that, well, obviously, and I were to assume that, well, there obviously was no bad blood between the Wiggles and Sam. Sam was just doing what he was doing.
Sure.
Yeah, so, and that's that. And again, there's like, probably the departure and the send-off for Sam could have been done better, and maybe it would have not caused those reports and what they were saying. They took it the wrong way. That's ridiculous.
I think Sam he sort of had the misconception or thought that he was going to actually be a permanent replacement, that Greg was not going to come back.
It seemed like it.
But Greg did come back.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, well, how are they supposed to know? Even obviously, even Greg himself. How are they supposed?
Yeah.
How are they supposed to know that he would feel better, and if he were to come back to the Wiggles, which he did.
Sure.
But then, I mean, not long after Greg came back and such, because at a certain point, well, 2 Wiggles, and then Greg would join with them. Murray and Jeff, their departure from the Wiggles.
Yes.
Yeah, because...
That was a big shocker.
You want to take this one? Or?
It was just, they both decided it was time. It was time for them to go, I mean, Jeff had some health issues. He had a pacemaker put in because he had a
blackout.
He had a blackout behind the wheel. Fortunately, he wasn't going very fast, and he hit a tree.
Like, his heart stopped pumping at one point.
So, he had a pacemaker. But it was just, I think they were just both ready to move on. And that was it.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, because for Murray, well, by this point, his kids had grown up, and he really didn't, by this point, he really didn't want to miss out on a lot with his family.
I think it was kind of sad because as much as they were loved by children, they were involved with children.
And I can't believe I forgot
they pretty much missed their own children growing up.
I was going to say, I can't believe I almost forgot to mention that, because... Well, yeah, I mean, it's understandable, and I should have known that this would be talked about, and it's obvious because of a lot of touring, and them traveling around the world, because them being away from family for a good chunk of months,
Exactly.
Yeah, tough and such, and of course, they've of course loved doing the tours and the travels, but at the same time, family's also important. Mm-hmm. To them, of course. So, and I've seen like some of the footage that was in this. Like, there were times like some of their family members did attend to their concerts, like Anthony's family, for example.
Right.
So by that point, because Murray and Jeff, they decided to retire, and Greg went along with them. And Anthony, well, he still felt it in him, and he just couldn't see himself retiring because he still had the energy and just felt it in him,
He was always. I always thought that Anthony was the backbone of the Wiggles.
I'd say pretty much so.
He was the backbone, and he was the driving force behind it.
Exactly,
and still is. So,
yep. Because he was one of those. I mean, not just Murray, Greg, and Jeff, but Anthony especially. Mm-hmm. Like, I probably the main guy who started all this in the first place.
I agree.
And so then, because, well, I mean, of course, this broke headline news, and, well, the question is, who was going to be the next, 3 Wiggles alongside with Anthony? And sure enough, it was Simon, Lachlan, and Emma, so that became the new Wiggles. Now, how did you feel on this? Because when new Wiggles stepped in, and Greg, Murray, and Jeff departing, so...
it was the evolution of the Wiggles. That's how you had to look at it. And it's I think I pointed out to you, there was definitely, I'll use Kiss for an example. Kiss started out with Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley. They were the founding members. Mm-hmm. Peter Criss and Ace Frehley. And first it was Gene and Paul, and then Peter came along, and then Ace. And so they were together for a number of years, and then finally, Peter Criss left the band in 1980.
Some of them retired and left Kiss, and some of them unexpectedly passed away.
They were replaced. They moved on, and then so then then this new incarnation of Kiss becomes Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Tommy Thayer, and Eric Singer.
And Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, they've been the only two remaining members of Kiss, correct?
Yes, I mean, of course,
like ever since they first began, like
yes, they're the two original members. They've stayed with it the whole time.
right.
Peter Criss and Ace Frehley came back to the band in reunion tours and did albums, did an album with it, but they didn't stay with it. They ended
Right.
up leaving the band. Ace Frehley's out on his own now. Of course, they're all out on their own, doing their own thing.
Of
because
course, yeah.
Kiss retired, so.
Yep. So there's that good example.
Yeah, in other words, there's also been talk, and I'll use this again, draw this parallel between the Wiggles and Kiss. That kind of a strange comparison, but there is kind of a comparison because Kiss has talked about
what bands
continuing on.
What bands went through similar?
Well, Kiss has talked about reinventing themselves. Another, Kiss, an evolution of a new band. A new Kiss band that would perform the same way they did. They just got too old to perform, and they knew it was just getting ridiculous for them to be out on stage because they're in their 70s.
Yeah.
And Gene and Paul are.
Yep.
But that's just the way it was. So with the Wiggles, it's an evolution of a new Wiggles that doesn't include the four original members. Well, three of the original members.
Yep. So, yeah. So okay. So again, because how'd you like? Okay. So with that and with the new Wiggles members, how'd you feel on that?
I liked them. I think they're a diverse group. I like the idea of having a female. I like the idea of having Hispanic, black. That.
And according to Anthony, and it's true because they already had female Wiggles, like in. Mexico, I want to say, and in Taiwan, but not in the U.S. like America, Australia, like English. That was never done before,
right?
So that kind of different. It
was different,
and because for the first time ever in Wiggly history, we had gotten our first female Wiggle, and. Once again, it caused some backlash and a bit of controversy when the new Wiggles stepped in. Like for a little while, and at the beginning of the new Wiggles, some people hated the new Wiggles, and also they felt that Emma wearing a skirt and a bow was forced upon. But that was not the case.
She requested it. That's what she.
She turned to Anthony about that.
And then you saw what happened.
Exactly.
Kids, even boys were starting to wear the bows, and do that, and
So what?
To each his own. And the kids were out there dressing like their favorite Wiggles.
And obviously, at some point, it died down, and they were accepted. And the more that people got to know the new Wiggles.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, if you recall, there were some parents that had their kids at a Wiggles concert. Murray showed up. He wasn't even in the band anymore.
And
he's walking by, and they're showing their kids. They're saying, "Look, it's Murray," and they're like, "Who's Murray?" They didn't even know who Murray was because they were introduced to the new Wiggles.
That's sad. So, it's sad but true.
Sad but true. Yes.
Yeah. And I thought you were gonna mention this, but no. But of course, I of course would wanted to mention that, and thus you did about Murray. And speaking of Murray, because I remember reading this. I think this because I remember reading this article. Actually, two articles. This one was not in this. One of them was not brought up in the documentary, but one of them was because that whole subject that was brought up about their families and being away from them, and one of his children, his son, used to dress up as Captain Feathersword and enjoy the songs, but at some point he said to his mommy that, and according to Murray, he hated the music because that's the music that takes daddy away. Yeah. And his son was little. He was a kid, so some kids what they say,
Well, and it's interesting how
and I'm pretty sure
things.
And I'm pretty sure that the older that Murray's son got, obviously, nothing bad and such, But I will also mention this. Actually, no, because before I get to that, the other thing I was going to mention about it's about Murray, because I think this was after the documentary, sometime after the documentary came out, because it was not established in this. I remember reading an article where Murray said that he regretted leaving the band.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'll have to go back and look at that, but it was not in the documentary, obviously. But again, I think this was sometime after the documentary came out. Okay, now I'm coming up to this because I thought at first you were going to bring this up, but the thing is, when they became part of the Wiggles, Lachlan, Emma, and Simon, little did we know, everybody. I mean, I don't know about the Wiggles themselves, but little did we know that apparently there was a love affair between Emma and Lachlan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they did eventually got married, but at some point, I think in 2018, because they did split up.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing, from what I can tell, nothing major, no bad blood between them. It was
an amicable separation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, they just found it difficult, and especially because, what they were a part of.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, they still got along and such, good friendship between them. And eventually, because each of them, they did get remarried to different people, so... so that time when the new Wiggles stepped in, and then, because, around, 2019, because this happened in 2019, and it wasn't until a year after it happened, the Wiggles, did something about it, because the bushfire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything to say on that? Because
no, I thought it was a wonderful thing they did.
Yeah, but I mean, we obviously, all of us, we heard about this on the news. It was just stunning to see this happen in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like on fire.
Imagine if Steve Irwin were alive. Oh, he'd just be all hands on, just doing something about this.
Oh yeah, he would.
Knowing him, so. I mean, of course, I do recall the Irwin family and then the Australia Zoo. Of course, they had part in it, helping out with the Australia fire, and that obviously because not only devastating for the Irwin family, but also the Wiggles because their home. Australia, what was happening there? Yes. It was crazy. Now, I forget, because, it started off, how did do you recall how the bushfire began and how it spread?
I'm not really sure. I don't know if it was weather-related, if it was a lightning strike, or if it was...
Maybe so, it just made, fire started, and it just started to happen on all different branches and trees, and it just
usually
spread.
happens with when there's a drought. So
okay,
it was
yeah.
very, very dry there, and it, that's why it would have happened.
Yeah. So this happened in 2019, and then a year after, actually, because, literally, sometime at the start of 2020, because that's when the Wiggles, the OG, they reunited to do a concert for bushfire relief.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, because it wasn't established in the documentary, and actually, I just remembered, because two other things that were not brought up in the documentary, I'll talk about the two others later on, but one thing is, this wasn't technically this wasn't the first time they had a reunion show, because they had one in 2016.
Correct.
So I don't think they had one ever since that one, until in early 2020, literally when 2020 began, is when they had that reunion show for bushfire relief, and it was all going so well, and the audience that they had, for that reunion show, they were grown adults. And clearly, those grown adults are those adults who grew up with the OG.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing.
You could see it. You could see it in their eyes. They were actually, some of them were tearing up.
Yeah, absolutely, and just screaming their heads off.
Yeah, it was like a Beatles concert.
Even I could see a few of them. They had bottles of beer. So,
Well, that's Australia, so there's that.
But at a certain point, and because bringing this up again, because I wanted to bring this up when we got to there, but you brought it up earlier. Not that there's nothing wrong with that. So, because halfway towards the end of the show, the second to last song that they sang, Get Ready to Wiggle, because according to each Greg and Emma, something was up with Greg.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, because when the song ended, that's when, because, after Greg, he managed to say, thanks for coming to support all those wonderful people, and and doing all that great work for everyone. And you can, and actually the full version of that reunion show is on YouTube on their channel, and you can hear it. You can hear, because of his microphone still being on, you can hear him go, whoa, because he was starting to feel it. And he went backstage and he passed by Murray, and you could see it on the footage of
he fell down the stairs practically and landed.
I think those kind of stairs were just like 1 or 2 or 3 steps.
They said his eyes rolled back in his head. He died, by the way. He died. He was clinically dead.
I mean,
they brought him back.
I mean, he was barely dead or almost dead.
No, he was dead. His heart stopped. He was clinically dead.
I mean, they
brought him back.
They didn't really establish that in the documentary that he was dead.
No, they did. They actually said that because they had to use a defibrillator.
Okay, maybe I just didn't quite get that.
Yeah, they had to use a defibrillator to restart his heart. They saved his life. But he...
Yeah, Luke Field, because Luke Field, another one of the Field brothers, talking about that too. So
yeah,
and calling in like someone, Kim, and to hopefully try to revive him, and which they successfully did.
They did. They revived him and brought him back. It was scary.
That was scary. Like, how did you I remember when we heard about this. I think because we were at an auto show when we first heard about this.
Yeah, and he was actually in. He woke up in the hospital and his wife is there with him. And
his second wife, Vanessa.
Yeah, and she said, you're having a heart attack. And he says, what do you mean I'm having a heart attack? Did I have a heart attack?
He had he had no idea what happened.
He was having one at that moment. His heart was under attack basically because he had,
he had a cardiac arrest basically.
Yeah.
And it was scary because when that was happening, and some footage that was never, I know what we had never seen before, but then it was part of this documentary, just footage from backstage of the reunion show, and a lady is informing Anthony and the others about this, and for Anthony, he was having a panic attack about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scary for all of them that how they just about almost lost, and how we almost lost one of the OGs.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. Just, God, imagine that, really. But, Greg, again, boy, how lucky he was. And he's, it was one of those, I think, it was established that he was one of those, few rare people to survive from something like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of possible, depending on...
They told him only 10% survive what he did.
Only 10%?
Only 10%. Survive
of what he survived.
Of what he survived.
Okay,
he was only one of 10. He was only in the 10 percentile, which is a very small percentage of people that survive that type of heart attack.
Yeah.
It was basically a widowmaker.
Exactly. So, and with Greg's blessing, because, and he coached and insisted that they continue on with the next show, a second show for Bushfire Relief, which they did. And what happened was a good chunk of people from Simon, and of course Emma, because Emma being there, and from some of the Field brothers, John and Paul Field, all wearing yellow skivvies in tribute to Greg.
Yep.
Yeah. And according to them, just the audience just shouting and screaming, and because obviously they were well aware of Greg, and they knew that he survived. Mm-hmm. He survived like a trooper. So.
Sure.
And with that happening, because another big thing that happened with the Wiggles, the pandemic. So, and they didn't. Unfortunately, they weren't doing any shows because of that. But I mean, they still did some things while that was happening, and up until in 2021, because they recorded for. Do you remember that? Because recording songs,
and they got the #1 song on that rock radio station. That was so cool.
Yeah,
they voted #1.
Elephant.
Elephant. Yeah, it was an old song that they redid.
And they because they were the Wiggles and they wanted to have it be Wiggle-ish, however they
added the fruit salad,
exactly.
Yummy in there. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Something that you...
I remember seeing... I was just going to say, I remember when that happened, I remember seeing clips of that on YouTube, and it was really cool. And actually, I kind of had no idea, because they made it... They said #2, but they also said #1. Mm-hmm. So, but go ahead.
You probably don't remember this, but I'm sure you know that you did see the Wiggles twice in concert.
Yes,
once in Huntington and once in Virginia.
I do, yeah.
And when we saw him in Virginia, Greg was not with him. Sam Moran was.
Yes,
and
that's
Murray
right.
announced on stage, he said, Greg's not with us. He's not feeling well. He's okay, and he kept reassuring everybody he's okay. He's okay.
That part I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah, I do remember. Remember Murray making that announcement on stage.
Yeah, because usually it's mostly Murray that makes some announcements, and especially on Greg. I've seen that. So
yeah, he did make that announcement when we were at that show.
Yeah, so it was because I do remember that because the first show the first Wiggles show that I ever got to see was with the OG.
Yep.
And then because fast forward, well, where Sam became a Wiggle. So
right. Now for our audience, OG is original group.
Yeah. In fact, I was even having a conversation with that with my mom, and even they didn't. Even the Wiggles themselves didn't understand what that meant. Like Jeff, said at one point, he thought that meant original gangster, or
old guys.
Yeah, that's another thing too. And here's what my mom said. Probably another way to best way to say it is old generation.
Yeah, older generation.
That sounds about right because they were the first generation.
They were.
Yeah, so that's another good way to say it and put at it. But yeah, that whole thing of them because they were at number 1, were they, or was it number 2?
No, they were number 1.
Because the documentary says they were at number 2, but apparently they made it to number 1.
They did make it to number 1.
That's awesome. And yeah, by 2021 and 2022, because more changes came for the Wiggles, and they expanded.
They did expand.
And for some stupid reason, and I had no idea about this until I heard this I was watching this in the documentary, that apparently them having 4 new members, that caused some controversy. And I'm like I never had a problem with this. It was interesting, and it didn't take me that long obviously for anybody to adjust to this new change and this new addition to the Wiggles, having 4 new members.
Yep.
And basically because different the 4 new members of the Wiggles from cultures, I want to say. However, because they're still Australian. I think if they were to have imagine this having someone who's not Australian, oh boy, that would for sure cause an outcry to the Wiggles fans.
Oh, sure.
Because of course, it has to be Australian. Always, whether, just, an Asian or, black person, all, has to be someone Australian with an Australian accent who was born in Australia. Sure. And that's, these 4 new members. And yeah, and anything on that? Because with them having 4 new members, expanding the Wiggles,
I like I said, it's all part of the evolution.
Yes, but one thing is I will mention, because this too caused some controversy, and I think at first Anthony had no idea about this and such, but and how I explained this when I was even before me and him we did doing our review of this, because we were talking about this, even I talked about this with my mom about Shirley Shawn the Unicorn. I think that's about the name, because them having a new costumed character, which being a unicorn, but the thing is the unicorn being a non-binary unicorn. And here's how I established this to my parents, and how I'm gonna what I'm about to say, because nowadays, and we're at that age where kids, they're gonna have to know they have to know this stuff. They're gonna have to know this stuff. And obviously, knowing the Wiggles, it's not like they did this intentionally. They just obviously, I'm pretty sure as though, I have no doubt that they knew about this, and because they had to do it as well.
It's never good to shelter a child.
What's that?
Never good to shelter a child.
There you go.
They have to be exposed to the truth. They have to be exposed to life, how things are.
Exactly. There you go. So that's basically what it is. I'd like to think, I feel like that whole backlash on the unicorn thing, maybe, I don't think it'd last that long anyways, but it's interesting, and seeing as how, the Wiggles hadn't had, a new costume character for quite a while, because for a long time it was just 3, Dorothy, Wags, and Henry. And then, sometime later, because, with the new members they had, well, by this point in 2021, because Emma was disembarking because of her Peach.
PhD.
Yeah, PhD.
Going for her PhD.
Thank you. Yeah, and doing new things and such. And as of now, because she is like she's doing something else, like playing a character of her own and for kids, and just that's also the same kind of thing that Sam Moran did. So yeah,
Exactly.
and then sure enough, because one of their new members already becoming a Wiggle, which being Tahisa Hawkins, actually, that's not how her first name is said. I can't believe I forgot how her first name is pronounced.
Is it Sahey? Sahey Hawkins, maybe?
Close enough, I think.
Yeah.
I apologize, guys.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to you guys. I mean, even you can't remember it.
I can't.
It should be so easy. In fact, I remember when I was watching it, because it sounded easy to say, but now I can't remember. Are you kidding me? Just you have one of those moments. Yeah. Well, she became the new Yellow Wiggle. And, she, of course, she grew up with, and just like Emma Watkins, because each of them growing up with the OG. And already, because as the documentary establishes, they already were bringing and adapting, songs from different cultures. Like the most notable one that's brought up, Ta-ba, Na-ba, that song.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Tasaya, I think that sounds about right. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. But her being the new Yellow Wiggle and such, and that was nice to see, because for the first time ever, we have still Australian, having, still an Australian person, an Australian black girl as a Wiggle.
Exactly.
And of course, kids, loving this new Wiggle. Also, finally, because now we can mention her, Lucia Field, Anthony's daughter.
She is now on stage with her dad.
Yeah, and because in the early days with her and her daddy, because one of her favorite characters was Dorothy the dinosaur, and she had a favorite Dorothy the dinosaur song, and this was so sweet of her daddy, because Lucia is responsible, and obviously, the inspiration for Dorothy doing ballet, because Anthony incorporated that into Dorothy doing ballet because of his daughter.
Exactly.
That was a sweet moment of him. So.
Yeah, it was. It was a very sweet thing.
Yeah. And for her to become a Blue Wiggle, because here's the thing, because aside from with Emma departing and Tasaya, I hope I am saying that right, that she became the new main Yellow Wiggle, because one Wiggle that at some point departed, it was never really, I would know if it were reported, but I mean maybe not on TV and not on news, but because there was another yellow female Wiggle named Kelly. I can't remember her last name, but she was a part of the Wiggles for quite a while. And then at some point she mysteriously departed and such. And because of that, another member of the Wiggles, who originally wore blue, became yellow. That was Evie Ferris, became the new Yellow Wiggle. And with red, because, Tasaya was, I think I am saying that right, Tasaya.
Okay.
She originally wore red, but then, when she then put on the yellow skivvy, because someone who had already been a part of the Wiggles for about 20 years, Katerina Medi, if I'm saying that right. Am I saying that right? Because Medi?
Katerina Medi. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because she had already been a part of the Wiggles for 20 years by that point, and was one of the choreographers.
Yes.
Thank you, choreographers. There. And she was a Wiggly dancer, of course, and for her to be now one of the Wiggles, that's great. And then, because of that, who was gonna, someone had to be the other Blue Wiggle, and who better than one of Anthony's children, Lucia. So, yeah, and it's great to see, because, again, just father and daughter, and how Anthony has gotten to know his daughter more.
Yeah. They got to spend more time together.
Exactly. That's so great. That is so great. Is there anything else we're missing?
No, I think we covered everything from soup to nuts.
Actually, because the reunion shows, when they did more reunion shows.
Yes.
Because it's not according to Anthony, it's really about, Greg recuperating. He survived. And Murray and Jeff, because Murray went through the same thing that Jeff did, open heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about that and life.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and also because, hey, here's another good thing. They didn't say this, but I'm saying this, like, hey, about life, because, hey, with those adults who grew up with the OG and how they were an important part of their lives, and some of them, according to the Wiggles, like, some of the adults who were kids, they had rotten childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's amazing. And I also love how in the documentary they show some home video taken from parents of their children and how it was incorporated into the documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And, well, an old footage of them and old photos. Some photos that, we've never seen before of the Wiggles.
Yeah, really neat.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Stuff.
It was amazing.
So what do we think about it?
Well, I think, yeah, because I think, yeah, by this point, and actually, I also can't forget to mention this, Paul Pettit, because, we didn't talk about Paul Pettit that much because, well, I mean, of course, we talked about, like, when he became a part of the Wiggles officially, and you know what, that's another thing, too. Anthony and Paul Pettit still going on in the Wiggles,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, it's a good thing we still have him in the Wiggles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, of course, by this point, there's only one and only Captain Feathersword, and that's Paul Pettit.
Right.
Yeah. And also Anthony mentioned, because his mom told him that Paul does that better than he does.
Yeah, I would agree. I saw a video of him doing it.
Anthony playing Captain Feathersword?
Yeah, at the very beginning. It's the first video we ever bought for you, in fact. It was on VHS.
It was Big Red Car, and that was from 1995.
Yeah, they were not even wearing like their uniforms.
No.
So they had gold and...
That's another thing,
yeah.
because a little mentioning about their wardrobe and such, and how eventually they got to the skivvies.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, there's this story that actually one of the first things that was brought up, that apparently Greg and Anthony, they had a race, like, who would get to, I guess, the blue skivvy. Mm-hmm. Anthony won, and Greg eventually, he gained on the yellow one. Which, obviously, because, yeah, yellow is Greg's color. And,
it is. And
same goes for Anthony, blue being his color. Mm-hmm. And actually, because originally he did wear green, but then he translated to blue.
I remember that. That was in that first video, too.
Exactly, yeah. And so, okay, what I was going to mention about Paul Pettit is that, about talking about the reunion shows, like, Paul thought that they were finally going to swear. Like, you watched the documentary, and did you miss it, or did you...
I did. I saw it.
Yeah. It was fine, but then Anthony, according to Paul, Anthony told them that no, they're not going to do that. They're just going to... the shows are going to be just like how they've done before.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It just would actually, because it wouldn't feel right if they did swear.
Yeah, it wouldn't feel right.
That would be kind of off.
Yeah.
Just have it be how the Wiggles have always been.
Of course.
Despite, even though, because, they're performing with grown adults, but again, the fact is the grown adults are those who grew up with the OG.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so there you go. And also, because, like, during the credits, because according to them, like, Jeff took a picture every day, and how we get to see those.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, more photos that we have never seen before. But, yeah, okay. Now, in conclusion, and with the documentary itself, Hot Potato, the story of the Wiggles, like, I couldn't have imagined how fantastic this documentary would be.
Like I said, it did a deep dive, which I really liked, and you really learned a lot about it. You learned a lot about them that you didn't know before.
Exactly. Even, like, just aside from some like, one or two past documentaries, again, that I brought up and such, yeah. But this one definitely does. Like, it does justice.
So how you rate it?
Yeah, well, before we get to the rating, I just want to say, because, listen, like, our final thoughts. Like, I will say this. The first time I was watching this, and, yeah, the same goes for you. I mean, you watched it twice. And I did, too. I actually did watch it. I actually watched it twice earlier today. So the first time I watched it, I was really feeling what this documentary is like, the power and emotion to this.
Right.
And what say you?
Same thing. Same exact thing. You took the words right out of my mouth. There was a lot. It was a powerful documentary. There was a lot of emotion there.
Yes.
Brought back a lot of memories. So that's very emotional. Yeah.
And and I remember you telling me this on text, and of course, a day before we were doing this, that and the same goes for me. Actually, not even close, because for you did get teary-eyed.
I think most parents that their kids grew up with the Wiggles would watch that and wax sentimental watching it, because it really does take you back.
Absolutely, it does. And like I just said, for me, I was close. I was maybe one or two times close to getting teary-eyed, but no, not even close. But I was feeling it, and I felt like as though I was, but it didn't hit me. And it's understandable because, like I said, the Wiggles not only being an important part of my life, but to my parents, to the family. Yeah. So
how do you rate it?
Well, for me, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll give it 10 out of 10.
Same goes for me. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, each of us. 10 out of 10 stars for Hot Potato, the story of the Wiggles. And not to mention, I think I did notice this, because maybe you missed it, because right there, the score
100% Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
That's amazing. Even
amazing.
Even the score on IMDb.
Yes.
That's good.
Fantastic.
And this is the Wiggles we're talking about, and just this documentary, none of it, from beginning to end, did not disappoint.
No.
Usually documentaries don't, so... And this one being very important about the Wiggles.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's amazing that we finally have a full-length documentary about the Wiggles, and not what I expected at first, and I'm sure the same goes for you. Anybody who were about to watch Hot Potato just didn't know what to expect, and just feeling the emotion and power to this. Again, this was fantastic. Probably, I think as of now, it's probably one of my top favorite documentaries.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, what about you?
Yeah, definitely so. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So I'm sure the same goes for some of you guys. Yeah, so again, we give it 10 out of 10. Hot Potato, the Wiggles, the story of the Wiggles. It was fantastic. I'm happy. I think for all of us, we can be happy now that we have a full-length documentary of all of us, our favorite and first, and that goes for me, our childhood/first band.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you guys? What did you think of the Wiggles documentary itself? Were you just like us, feeling the power and emotion to this? Any of you, maybe all of you, who grew up with the Wiggles, and with what this documentary had in store and how it said so much. Just, yeah, everything about it, because when they began and where they're currently at, it was fantastic. And yeah, and what did you think of me and my dad, each of us, our review of the documentary? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. Any last words?
I must be off.
He says that for me. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed our review of Hot Potato, the story of the Wiggles. More review videos are on the way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and we'll see you guys in the next video /review. Take care, and peace out.